Welcome to State of the Union. I'm Arthur Goldstein, and this is Jonathan Hallaby, and we are your hosts. And Jonathan has a story or two he'd like to open with, I believe.
Oh, okay. So I think we both have a story, but let me start with mine first. There was a petition. There is a petition that's going around. I'm not going to provide a link to it, but it was a bizarre petition, I thought, that asked parents to sign exempting schools from the new class size law. And the new class size law is something that has its roots going way, way, way back. I think
Way
we
back,
both know
yeah.
Lainey Hameson. I think you know who Robert Jackson was in the
Yeah.
CFE lawsuit. And so it was something that we fought for years, and now it's here, and we want to make sure that it's being implemented. And I don't trust that the DOE is going to implement it, but
Nor
it's
do
kind of
I.
it's kind of a shock to see a parent petition calling for not enforcing the law. I sent you that petition. Did you have a chance to take a look at it?
I did. Why do you think they want to be exempted from the class size law? Why do they want their children in classes with fewer opportunities for them to participate?
Yeah, well, I mean, that gets to the heart of who wrote the petition. There's a parent organization called PLACE. And PLACE, I don't know what it stands for, but in my mind, it stands for We Endorse Lee Zeldin and George Santos. We have Friends and Moms for Liberty, and I think that there's actually a practical reason. It's not just politically being regressive, retrograde, and reactionary. I think that I don't know the right word to say without being insulting, but with our gentrifying upper middle class white parents who want to be in public schools, there are only a limited number of public schools that they find acceptable. They don't want to be in public schools with regular kids and with regular New York kids. And by enforcing class size limits, that might leave the number of seats available in their very limited number of schools that they would consider sending their children to too limited, and they might not get in. And I think this is about, we're all in favor of class size limits as long as our kids can go to schools with other kids like our kids. And
Wow.
that's my take on it. I don't know. I think it's on the money.
Well, it's disappointing, and it's surprising that we still have mindsets like that in New York, where we're supposed to be a little more aware that it's a big world and there are other people besides us. Maybe there are parents who would like to address that. Maybe they could reach out to us if they want to.
That would be very good. And in the meantime, in the little description of this podcast, there is a petition, a parent petition as well, saying we want the class. We fought hard for these class size limits. We want them. All kids deserve smaller classes. That's what the petition says. That's what the truth is. And we'll put that in there so you can sign that if you haven't.
Good. I've got a different kind of story. We read a lot about the Moms for Liberty, the actual Moms for Liberty, doing book bans, and they don't want students to read this or that or many, many things. It seems they want life to be the Andy Griffith Show, which is not, probably never was. But there are a lot of non-MAGA people who are now talking about taking To Kill a Mockingbird out of the school curriculum for different reasons, saying that it portrays a white savior, which is not necessarily what people of color might want. And they're asking that it be removed as a mandatory book, as it often is, and be replaced with books like I'm I'm forgetting The Hate U Give, which is narrated by a narrator of color who has actually witnessed a racial atrocity and is reacting to it herself. Have you heard? You've heard about that, I know, because I've told you
Well, I
about
mean,
it.
you sent you told me, you sent me the article, and I went reading a little bit more. It's interesting, right? I grew up white in uh, overwhelmingly majority white suburb. I read To Kill a Mockingbird. I enjoyed reading it when I was a kid, and my first reaction was, "What? It's a little bit weird," but it's also weird. We were reading a book about the segregated South, where, in a sense, the main character doesn't speak in the book, and instead he's voiced through the eyes of a white child.
Mm-hmm.
It is a little bit strange, and I hadn't thought of it. And it's easy, being white, not to realize that I'm not hearing only white voices. I can recognize that much. I can recognize that there's something about whose point of view we always look at, and hopefully not always, but whose point of view we always looked at things from, be it in history or in literature. But maybe somebody who knows more about literature and narrators and narration, but also about race in this country, might have a sharper, more nuanced take on it. I can just tell you my immediate reaction was To Kill a Mockingbird. They're nuts to take it, and then realizing, you know what, it sounds like there's a really good point here, and I would very much like to hear more. And I would tend to defer to people whose lived experience comes closer to understanding it. Can you imagine? So I was white, and I always had white narrators. Can you imagine not being white but always having white narrators? It's something
Yeah.
I never really thought about.
Mm-hmm. And there are, of course, people who still want to ban To Kill a Mockingbird because they want to pretend that racism has never existed in the United States. And it's one of many books that has been target for banning. Let's move on to what we're going to do this week. Who do we have as guests this week, Jonathan?
Okay, so we have Chad Hamilton and Bennett Fisher, who until recently were employed by the United Federation of Teachers. And we have one more guest.
Dingy Joe, my former student who went on to become a teacher, and alas, she became a math teacher and broke my heart. I thought she would be an English teacher. Where did I go wrong? I'll never know, but we'll talk to
Sounds
her a little later.
sounds like you went right to me, but okay.
Yes, but you're a math teacher, so that's your prejudice. My prejudice is completely different.
Okay, so let's get to it.
Okay.
Welcome to the second podcast of State of the Union with Arthur and Jonathan. I'm Jonathan Holloway.
I'm Arthur Goldstein. And who
And
are
we
you
are-
guys?
Yeah.
Hi, I'm Bennett Fisher. I'm a retired teacher, retired art teacher, and former chapter leader.
And I am Chad Hamilton. I am the current chapter leader of 231K, also the school where Bennett was a teacher and chapter leader. Also, I am a classroom teacher at, special education classroom teacher at 231K here in District 75.
I have great respect for special education teachers. It's a really tough job, and I did it once, and I know I'm not very good at it. So I just want to say that. What you guys have in common is that you were both employed by the United Federation of Teachers as, I believe, part-time staffers. And you were both removed from your jobs. We're a union, and we believe in due process. And for example, Chad, if they wanted to remove you from your teaching job, there would be a long process called 3020A where you would go before an arbitrator and they would have to prove that you were incompetent or something to remove you from your job. I would like to know what is the process for being removed from a union job? And I'll ask Bennett to answer first.
Well, the process in my case is that I was just told I would have to be let go because of some political disagreements that became known by my boss between me and the union. And I was treated like an at-will employee, which I always understood myself to be.
Wait, you're telling me that the UFT which advocates for job protection, offers its employees no job protection whatsoever. Was that your experience too, Chad?
Yeah, that was my experience too. I just received an email that essentially told me that I was potentially being laid off, and that if I was being called back, that someone would be in touch with me, and I never heard back, and that was it.
Wow. Can we take a step back? And I think we're going to circle around to this. But starting with Chad this time, what did you actually do for the union? What was it? What kind of work were you involved in?
So I was a PM staffer in the UFT's District 75 office. I worked in that office 1 or 2 days a week after school. So I'd hop on the train at the end of the school day, head over to 52 Broadway, and I would be in that office for like 3 or 4 hours in the afternoon. Things that I typically would be working on would be really mostly answering member complaints or member issues throughout District 75. So in the Salesforce system that UFT uses, there would be a queue of different cases. I would just move through the queue and call individual members to field their questions and concerns and provide them with resources and information and advice on next steps that they would need to take to resolve their questions or concerns.
Was this just bureaucratic stuff, or were you actually helping people?
I was helping people. Yeah, I would say the bulk of my time there, at least 90% of the time, I was directly interfacing with UFT members working in the schools who were having problems either with their principals or APs, or had a question about the contract. And I would help them out with those questions.
And before we ask the same question to Bennett, can you just, you mentioned Salesforce. What is that? It doesn't sound like a union thing.
It's definitely not a union thing, although it is used by our union. I never fully understood it myself. I'm not much of a technology person, but what it essentially is that when members of the UFT would contact the UFT, either by calling in to the general UFT number or sending an email to a UFT officer or a district rep, whatever question or complaint that member had would be entered into Salesforce, which is then this online system that assigns a case number to each call or to each email. And you would then, as a PM staffer, or I assume also some full-time UFT employees were doing this as well, you could log in then to the queue, which is a list of all the different cases in Salesforce, and you could read whatever that individual member's question or concern is, and then it would have the member's contact information. So you would then contact the member, assist them with their question or concern, and then you would fill out a little case log that explains what assistance that you provided, and then you would indicate if the case was closed or if it needed to be referred to someone else within the UFT.
I did something different, although I did use Salesforce. Salesforce, it's a big database of everybody's personal information, and that's used to generate every mailing list, and it's part call center, so that when you call up, you get directed by a staff of people reading scripts who hopefully direct you to the right place. And it's something that I think most of corporate America uses. And they have an entire floor, or at least most of a floor, somewhere on the UFT where they staff. But it's also off-site. It's a big online thing. You don't have to be on site to work for Salesforce. And UFT contracts with them to do all their data management and emails and just about everything, to make to make pie charts and graphs and all those gewgaws and doodads that look good on corporate reports.
And I wonder if gewgaws and doodads are what members in crisis need. There's been a consistent lack of service from UFT to active members. I was chapter leader of Francis Lewis High School, the biggest high school in Queens, the most overcrowded school in the city, for 12 years, and members constantly came to me with issues. I would tell them sometimes, if I didn't know, call the UFT, but I always had to add, if you don't get a good response, come back to me and I'll find you somebody good to answer your question. I'm not going to dwell on this, but my source for good people was Amy Arundel, who's also been moved from her position with, Mogu says we don't comment on personnel matters, but all of you speculating are wrong, which is, in fact, a comment on personnel matters. What I would like to know from both of you, and I'll ask Bennett to go first, was there any suggestion that either of you was not competent at your job? Because for me, what I want when I call UFT and what I want when members call UFT is someone knowledgeable and competent. Did anybody suggest that you were deficient in one or both of the above? Bennett?
No, never. Just quite the opposite.
Mm-hmm. Chad?
Yeah, my experience is the same as Bennett's. That actually they wanted me to work more days than I was willing to work because of my my productivity and the accuracy of the information I was sharing with members.
So did they give you, and I guess we'll start with Chad this time, did they give you any warning in advance that you were, I assume that it's going to turn out to be political, I know that, but that you were treading on thin ice, or that there was a problem with who you were or what you were doing? Obviously your work was good. So did they warn you about your thoughts or your activism?
No, there was no forewarning. I did anticipate I was going to be removed from my PM staff position because
Why?
I had become increasingly vocal about my support of the New York Health Act, increasingly vocal about my dissatisfaction with the 2023 contract, also increasingly vocal about my opposition to a revote for the OTPT chapter that did not appear to be predicated on the will of the majority of those chapter members. So and then also I resigned from the Unity Caucus. So because of that, because of all those things, I was anticipating at some point either a conversation or someone just telling me that I no longer have a job at UFT. But no one actually had a conversation with me before or after my removal. It was just a sort of mass HR department style email saying that if my services are needed, I'll be getting a notification in the future, which I never received.
And Bennett, how about you? Did they give you any warning that you were in trouble?
Well, let me give you a little bit of history. And that when I retired, I really wanted to stay involved with the union. I love unionism. I love the UFT. I love being a chapter leader. And now I was retired and had time. And so I actively sought out a job at the UFT. And I did this knowing that it would be really, really hard to get because I've never been a member of the Unity Caucus. And I've been independent, I've been a member of some opposition groups, but also had a lot of friends, though, at the UFT, at Unity, and respected a lot of people there who really, really helped me throughout my career. One of those people was Debbie Poulos, who I knew from after the 2018 contract came out. It seemed to me would have a bit more responsibilities and work in her office because of the operational complaint process, which had been expanded in the 2018 contract. So, and I knew that she had a history of sometimes reaching outside of the Unity Caucus, to hire people. So I lobbied for a job with her and I got it, and it was great. And but I knew all the time that I was, always treading on not quite as thick an ice as as I could be there. And at the same time that soon after I began working there, was when the whole healthcare issue hit, when we realized that our union, along with our mayor, was trying to take my retiree traditional Medicare away from us, and they tried to do it secretly behind our backs, and when that became, a known thing, that became a gigantic issue for me, and that was no secret. And during the last election campaign, the last general election, which was going on at the same time as a lot of our retiree activism pushing back against this healthcare bait and switch that they were trying to foist on us, I was and still am working with a caucus within the retiree chapter called Retiree Advocate, and we are gigantic supporters of a National Health Act and of preserving the public health care that we have now, and we were participating with other retiree groups from other unions in having press conferences and demonstrations. And in the middle of that, one of my name appeared on a press release for a demonstration, and that got the immediate attention of the union leadership, and my boss was pressured to let me go, which she resisted, and she defended me, and I'm very, very grateful for that. But at the same time, I was cut back from doing a lot of the things that I had been doing before. I wasn't allowed to come into the union offices on Wednesdays, and Wednesdays is the traditional days when everybody who was in the field is usually in the office. So I guess they didn't want my influence. And my job became pretty much sort of sitting in front of a computer doing data entry.
Bennett and Chad will return, but we're going to start a new feature on this podcast where we interview teachers to learn about new techniques. And our first guest is a math teacher from my home school, Francis Lewis High School, named Ding-Yi Zhou. So welcome again. We want to begin a new feature where we're going to talk to teachers about things they do in their classroom that are interesting or innovative. And our first victim, our first guest, is Ding-Yi Cho. I've known Ding-Yi for a long time. She was my student at Francis Lewis High School, and I gave her a very good grade, even though she was always being smarter than me. It made me really angry. I wanted to fail her, and I think personally that she was doing it on purpose. That's Toby. You heard Toby is chiming in, giving his opinion. So welcome, Ding-Yi. Thank you so much for joining us. I'm going to turn you over to Jonathan because I know you guys are going to talk math stuff, and I probably won't understand it, but I will nod my head and pretend that I do.
So we have an audience that includes both people who can count and everybody else. So why don't we start with things that everybody understands? Why did you end? Why are you a math teacher, and what's it like to be a math teacher for you? Sort of general. What stands out the most?
Well, coming from an immigrant background, when I first came to the United States, the one subject that I was very good at was math because my English level was very low. Um, so the class that I enjoyed the most was math class, and seeing like what my teacher was doing for us, for all of my subjects, I have really amazing ESL teachers, and all of my math teachers, they were really good. That sort of puts me to a mindset like, hey, I want to do something that in the future I can help students who are like me. So I remember Time 2000 always have this conference every year where they will have high school students over and participate in very interactive lessons and have a very fun day. So I went on this field trip. It's also a way to get out of school for one day, but I but I really enjoyed the conference, and that sort of is the starting point where I, start to think more about joining the program of Time 2000 and being a math teacher. So that's pretty much the beginning of it. And I was just really glad that I was able to do that because, as you can see now, like I would say my English is pretty good. Also, thanks to Mr. Ghosting. But honestly, my English improved the most after I entered a college because I don't know if you know this, but Francis Lewis has quite a large Chinese student population. So while I was there, there's really no need to speak English outside of the classroom. I have, Chinese friends. I don't have to get out of my comfort zone and make friends with native speakers. But story is different. Once I enter college, no one else really um, will speak Chinese to me. So I have to learn, I have to speak, I have to force myself to be better at my English. And honestly, Dr. Arts and the whole program help put a lot of emphasis on helping students like me. They will hire tutor. They will have actually. I remember Dr. R's know that there were a bunch of students who can't really speak English that well. So she actually created a class for us to attend on Fridays. So that was really great. I don't think I will get that kind of opportunity everywhere else. It is totally free for us to do that. So I'm really just very thankful for that.
Okay. Just for our listeners, Dr. Arts and Time 2000. Dr. Arts is the director of Time 2000, which is the math teacher preparation program at Queens College. And Mr. Goldstein is the alias that Arthur goes by when he's actually in school. Dingy, you're here because Arthur thinks you're a great teacher. What's something that you do personally that you're especially good at? Is it a particular kind of proof, or is it just something in your classroom? Is it a game? What's the thing that comes to mind that kind of like makes you stand out, that you're proud of?
Makes me stand out. I would say honestly, it's a lot of the work that the math teachers at Francis Lewis do outside of the classroom. On a daily basis, we give worksheets actually, so a lot of work goes into that. So a lot of it's just a lot of planning. Like our worksheets, I would just call it like really, really beautiful worksheets. Like every day is very organized. But on top of that, what I was thinking about, actually, I jotted down some notes. Is also I love using Kahoot to review, because that's a great way to engage all students, because they love games. And
Let me interrupt you, Dingy. What is Kahoot? I don't know, and I think a lot of our viewers don't know either.
so Kahoot is sort of like an online platform where teachers can create sort of like a kind of like a game, but students can how should I describe it? So I can create, let's say, 10 questions, and they can be true, false, multiple choice, whatever. I find multiple choice is the easiest for students to answer. And once I've created the game, and they will have like, okay, I will say today we're gonna do Kahoot, so they will just join, sort of using like a link or a code. They will go on Kahoot and then use a code to join the session. And on their phone, they will just have like 4 rectangles with different colors, maybe saying 1, 2, 3, 4. So they will look at the question that I present them on the TV, and then they will work out their question, and then they will click the answer. And at the end of the game, they will have like ranking. So like depend on how fast you answer or the correctness of your answers, you can be ranked 1, 2, and 3.
Sounds like fun.
Right, and then so they like that competitiveness of it. It's like they want to be the best, but then also it doesn't really hurt anybody if they don't do that well, because you wouldn't know who's not doing well. Like, so that's a good aspect of it. And also, for teachers, we can collect data right away after the game, like how many students get this one right, like what is the percentage. So it's actually really, really fun.
And it
Okay.
sounds like it
You
helps guide you what to teach. If you have
Yes, yes.
you mentioned competition, but you also talked about worksheets, and you said we. Did I understand you right? Do you work with the other teachers in your department? Is there like real collaboration between you guys?
Yes. So,
How did that happen?
how did that happen? Honestly, because Francis Lewis Math Department has many teachers from Time 2000. So, we kind of already know each other, and so having that allow us to have pretty much a very good understanding of how we work with each other. And so like, for example, I'm teaching algebra 1 this year, and I'm working with another teacher, Miss Kim, Andrea Kim, who's also from my same cohort from Time 2000. So we will work together and collaborate on not really making the worksheet now, because we already have some worksheets, but improving it to better fit our students' need now.
Okay, that's really cool. There's also teachers, I'm sure, who didn't come through Queens College. Are you
Right.
able to bring them into, can you bring them into
Yeah.
that same sense of community?
Yes, absolutely. Like I would say like we're very welcoming. So I feel that if anybody who's new to the department were gonna ask me a question, I'm not going to be hesitant to help them out. Like there are
Do, do,
already this
Mhm.
actually our department has a Google Drive that has resources on the drive for the subjects that we have. So but yeah.
Has that kind of collaboration gone beyond just lesson preparation? Do you do other things together? Do you reach out to people in other departments and collaborate, or is it just around the lessons?
Um Reaching out to other departments, mm, well, we have team meetings in the building. If it's like because our school is so big, it's really hard to talk to other departments during regular school day unless this time is allocated for that purpose. So we do have team meeting times um before, but now we have this twice a month PD, sort of different than what it used to be. But I would just say once a week, that will be the time that, if anything, I'll be able to collaborate with other teachers. But that's just
Mhm.
our school.
Okay.
Yes, yeah, it's quite true. The math problems that we have to teach now in for the regions class is quite different than what it used to be. I think there are actually a lot of English involved in
Mhm.
problems specifically for the regions class. A lot of word problem, complicated word problems, long passages, a whole page of overwhelming amount of words.
Mhm.
Um, it's different than what it used to be, but I would say yes. Actually, I teach interesting classes this year. Like my algebra one class, they they're bilingual ELL students, right? But they come from um China from a very young age to here, so it's a very interesting group because their English is not so good. Their math also is weak.
Mm.
It's actually very challenging to help them. I have a lot of newcomers who just came from China. Their math is excellent.
Mhm.
Their math is excellent. They don't even need you to help them. They will just kind of figure it out.
Wow. Do you think that there should be changes in the courses that we're doing, or I guess some of the courses are organized because of the Regents exams, the way that the Regents exams are structured or the content in them. Do you think that there need to be changes made to the courses or to the exams?
Um, Changes. I do think there should be some changes. I exactly, but I really do think though it kind of puts the ELL students in such a disadvantage. Um, I have students who just came here and they're in my algebra two class as I mentioned before, but they also need to just kind of study on their own to take the algebra one and geometry region without taking the class. As that's passing the algebra one region is the requirement to graduate high school. And so I sort of become the person to inform them, hey, you need to actually take these regions as well. Make sure you study for them. But they have no information in terms of how to study for these exams. Um, I don't know if
Mhm.
that answers your question, but I was just like, after you asked me the question, I thought about that.
You bring up some questions that I have. You were born in China, correct?
Yes,
And what age were you when you came here?
I was 13 years old.
Wow. So I gotta say, your English is very good to come at that age and speak English like this. Um, of course, I take complete credit for that. No, but here's what I want to ask you. I've had students from China who have told me, these math classes, I was doing this stuff when I was, I don't know, 8 years old or 10 years old or a long time ago. And I've also had Chinese students who, like you, are just, and well, not like you, like me, are just completely freaked out by math.
Yeah,
And I wonder how you would explain that discrepancy. I mean, it seems like the education in China may not be uniform, like
it's
not everybody comes here at the same level.
yeah, well, because in China you kind of you go testing is big in China. Like you kind of go to the kind of school based on how you score on exams. So if you do really well on, let's say, a standardized test, then you're able to go to a very good school. If not,
Mm-hmm.
go to maybe like a vocational school.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so yeah, I think it really comes from that. Also, the area of which part of China you come from.
Mm-hmm.
That the resources and everything matters. If you come from big city, most likely you're gonna be good at doing the school stuff. But if you come
Mm-hmm.
from more of a rural area, then probably not.
Okay, thanks.
You mentioned getting ready for tests and standardized tests in China. How about here? A lot of people have strong opinions about standardized testing and standardized tests. Do you have an opinion? You just teach to it, or you think there should
Uh,
be more, there should be less? It's okay as it is.
I don't know. Like for example, in algebra two, um, we have to teach statistics to students, but the kind of statistics that's covered in the course may not be what they're gonna like. May not be what they truly will learn in like an AP stat class.
Mm-hmm.
So we as teachers are just teaching them like you gotta know how to do these problems. But if they go on to AP stat class, like at least that's what I've heard, that's not how they really do statistics.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of like that. But they will only see this uh, statistics problem for on the test for this exam. That's it.
So you would like more appropriate questions on the tests.
Yes.
Okay, so
Right.
we disagree. I don't like the tests at all, but we're allowed to have different opinions here.
Yes.
I had to teach to them too. I just never liked them.
Yes. Yes. I mean, I understand is a way to kind of measure their ability to do well or not, like in a very unified way. I understand that. But the concept of just teach to the test, yes, it's not the best for the students learning, I will say. Um, yeah, I actually do agree with you. I'm not disagreeing with you because it's a very like jam-packed curriculum that we have to cover. Every day is a brand new thing. Doesn't matter if you understand or not, I have to move on. Like if you're
Yeah.
good luck, catch up, kind of like that. And yeah. And also I think the thing that bothers me the most, to be honest, is how low of a raw score they need to get to just pass the test. Like they only need a 26, 28 out of like an 88 point test to get a 65.
Wow, maybe I could have passed geometry back now
No,
when
Geometry
no,
I went.
geometry's different.
Oh,
one.
really? Because I had a student told me, math is easy. You just have to pay attention. Like my worst student, she was doing great in math. You pay attention, you get it. And I didn't pay attention in geometry, and that's why I failed. And I had to go to summer school, and it was horrible.
Do the kids have fun in your class? Do you
Do
make
the
them
kids
laugh?
have,
Do they
I
smile while they're working?
I try to make them laugh. I try to be friendly with them. It's each class is just have a different dynamic.
Mm-hmm.
It's very different. Like you get like for example this my fourth period class, they're also great with each other. They're very open, they're very outgoing. So it's very fun, like they will interact with you. Versus my
Mm-hmm.
other area will be very reserved. They don't really, no matter how silly you are, they won't really have much responses. Like
Mm-hmm.
so it's very different.
Yeah, it's very luck of the draw with classes. We get observed, and maybe your period one class you get observed, and you're the best teacher in the world, and then your period two class is asleep, and you're the worst teacher in the world, even though you did the exact same thing. Of course, we have to kind of cater to our audience, but that's sometimes they say the teacher is the only variable in the classroom. But if you're teaching 34 kids, there are 35 variables in the classroom. We have to consider all of them.
Yeah.
And I know the kids speak very highly of you. We have some of the same students, and they do speak very highly of you. They like you, and that's a big thing.
Yeah. So you just try every day. I will say, for doing this job, like every day I wake up, I do look forward to going to the classroom and seeing them. It doesn't matter if you're sleepy or what, but every day is going to be a very fun day, I think.
Is it weird going back to your school and seeing your old teachers?
Is it
I mean,
um
not are the teachers weird, because we know, but is it weird for you?
uh I think, is it weird? I wouldn't say it's weird. It's I think it's just nice that I'm able to now work at a place, where I come from. Pretty much, it's like it's very a full circle moment for me. And actually, like my biggest goal when I'm in the program is I want to teach at Francis Lewis. So that's always been my goal. Now I have achieved it, and then I also student taught there. So it's like I've never left Francis Lewis. I mean, that shows how much I like the school. So it's just nice.
That's great. That's really great to hear. It's really encouraging. I love hearing you say that you love to go to work and that you're happy to be there. I love hearing that from a teacher. It makes me feel great. I'm glad
Yes,
you said that.
yes.
And
So
and I'm
I
left with nothing left to ask. I think that's perfect.
yes. So yeah, it's good. I'm trying. I'm teaching pre-calc this year. It's the first time I'm teaching
Oh my
pre-calc.
God.
So it's a lot of work, but I like it so far. So I'm glad that I'm able to have the opportunity to venture out to teach pre-calculus.
Yeah.
Sounds fantastic, and it's great that you love it. Thank you so much. This was really
Thank,
a pleasure. Thank you.
thank you.
Yeah. Thank you so much for coming.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Bye.
And now...
Hey, Rocky, watch me pull a rabbit out of my hat.
But that trick never worked.
This time for sure. Presto! Well, I'm getting close.
And now it's time for another special feature.
I'm sure it's legitimate to use these methods to record calls and concerns and such. But I will say that ever since Michael Mulgrew improved the UFT's communication, it's much more difficult to actually get through to a human at UFT. And obviously, they stopped you from communicating with humans. You mentioned Debbie Poulos, who was responsible for operational complaints, which we're all chapter leaders or former chapter leaders, in my experience, is vastly superior to the leaden, endless grievance process. First of all, as chapter leaders, you know the number one complaint from members is, I have this problem, it's the worst problem in the world. And when you file a grievance, make sure my name doesn't get mentioned. So members are loath to file grievances sometimes. And even if they're successful, some won't go to step two. I was able to solve a lot of problems with this. And an interesting parallel to my friend Amy Arundel is that Debbie was also removed as a borough head and transferred, where she created this process. It has been enormously helpful. And I'm off on a tangent here, but I have a question for both of you, and I guess the answer is obvious, but I want to follow up on my last question. Since you were not removed for lack of competence, and since even before the UFT's improvements in the phone line, it's been difficult for members to connect with people who would actually help and serve them. Since I had to run back to Amy Arundel and say, find somebody good who can tell my member about retirement or, steps or anything, leaves. What exactly are the people at the UFT hired for? What is the criteria? And I'm going to ask Chad first because we've lost Bennett.
So one of the primary criteria is to be a member of Unity Caucus. That's essentially how I got hired. I was approached and asked to, after it had come up that I was no longer affiliated with any opposition caucus and that I was now independent. So this was, would have been like 5 years ago or so. I was approached and asked to join Unity Caucus, which at the time I didn't really know much about Unity Caucus, other than knowing that they're the caucus that runs the union.
Chad, how did being a member of Unity Caucus help you to serve members, aside from getting you your job?
Well, in terms of serving members, that had no impact at all.
That's interesting.
In terms of me getting the job of a PM staffer, that that had a lot to do with it, as evidenced by the fact that once I was no longer a member of Unity Caucus, I was then out of a job as a PM staffer. But I can attest that aside from Bennett, there was no other person that I'm aware of working as a PM staffer that was not a member of Unity Caucus. So it's there's definitely a political patronage component to that. So
well, I'll tell you, I do know of one other person who's not in Unity, who is or was working as a staffer. So let's be fair. I do know that. Bennett, we lost you for a while. The question was, being as we know that competence is not the criteria for getting your job as a staffer helping members in UFT, what do you think is the criteria for getting a job helping members at the United Federation of Teachers?
Well, the criteria in 99.9% of the cases is loyalty to the Unity Caucus.
How do you think that helps members?
It doesn't help them at all. I mean, it doesn't. I mean, it helps them as much as the person who is in the Unity Caucus is helpful, but it certainly isn't helpful to the union when you're cutting out thousands and thousands of people who could be very competent union employees and members and activists, and you're not getting them a chance to participate on that level just because you don't trust their loyalties, because they don't pledge fealty to you in your patronage mill.
Let me ask something kind of contrary. I talk to Unity people, and I've had Unity people say, yes, we have a loyalty system. We hire people from our caucus, but we're still serving the members well because the people that we hire do the, are people who serve the members well. And I don't think I want to ask you to name names, but is that always true? Are they, when they're hiring people, are they always hiring Unity people, but Unity people who are actually good at helping members? Do you have contrary experience? Again, you don't have to name names.
My experience is contrary. My experience is that loyalty to the caucus trumps competence and helpfulness to the members. It doesn't mean the two don't coexist in some people sometimes, but the priority is loyalty.
Chad, how about you? Did you saw people who really shouldn't have been in a position of serving members? Again, I'm not asking you to name names.
Yeah, I did. I saw a number of people who were doing a great job and, really being helpful, legitimately helpful to members. And, I was also made aware of people who were not. But
they were Unity members.
But they held on to those positions because they were Unity members.
So no consequence if you are incompetent and a Unity member.
Not that I'm aware of.
Arthur, do you have a good wrap-up question? I think we've kind of thank you guys for being here. I think we should end on some sort of high note.
Jonathan, I would like to respond to your question because
go ahead.
I've got a lot of experience with people working for UFT who were not effective. From the moment I became a teacher, I was working at Hillcrest High School, and I got a job at Newtown High School, knowing that I was going to lose. I forget what they called us. I think TPD teachers back in the day. And I found another job, and I forgot to return my key, and they wouldn't send me my paycheck. They had it at the school. And I called UFT, and the advice I got was to go to the police, which was, in my view, ridiculous. I didn't think the police were going to go to Hillcrest High School and arrest the AP who was withholding my paycheck. Instead, I did what I really needed to do, which was go return the key and get my paycheck. This was preposterous advice. And as chapter leader, I had many members who got bad, preposterous, unhelpful advice from the UFT. And it appears that this patronage system is what caused that. And I'm sorry, but I haven't got an upbeat anecdote to tell you, except that I hope that some of these good people, you guys, Amy Arundel, who can help us, are restored to their positions.
So let me ask, and it's designed as an upbeat question, and you can answer too. I could answer too. I don't think I feel like it today. But starting with Bennett first. So you're not working directly for the union now. Are you still working to improve the lives and conditions of our members? And what do you do?
Yeah, absolutely. I wouldn't stop. I consider myself to be the same person, the same union activist that I've ever been. And right now I'm working with other retirees in the retired teacher chapter, with retiree advocate UFT, and we hope to have great success in the spring chapter elections that are coming up. We've been doing many actions trying to preserve health care for both retired members and for in-service members, to get the word out, to let people know what's going on and what needs to happen to preserve our good public health care. And to me, I'm doing the same job, I always did. And I'm doing it. And now that I'm not working as an employee of the UFT, I actually feel much freer, to do that work. I think there was a time when I was working for the UFT when, I did self-censor and I did, uh, hold back on my public, persona, and to try to, protect the people who protected me when they hired me, to work at the UFT. And eventually, by the way, I was let go from the UFT because I wrote a letter in support of the OTPT chapter over the summer and expressing my disagreement with Michael Mulgrew's position of having a contract ratification revote for that chapter without renegotiating. And that was the catalyst that got me fired when that
Was
immediately,
that a
of all the
public
letters
letter?
that I wrote to Michael Mulgrew over my, 30-year career, that was the only one which, to my knowledge, ever got his attention and getting me. And I guess
Okay.
the only one he could ever do anything about. So
Was that a public letter, Bennett?
it was not a public letter. No, it was just a letter to, Michael Mulgrew and some of the officers, from the UFT officers and employees.
So,
Not a
so
public
Chad,
letter.
are you're no longer working directly for the UFT. You heard the question. Are you continuing to serve members?
Of course, yes. So I'm still the chapter leader of P231K, and I will continue to serve the members of our chapter. I'm planning to run again for chapter leader, so I'll continue to provide that representation. I'm also still very involved providing help to chapter leaders throughout District 75. Both from my time as a PM staffer and just from attending the District 75 monthly chapter leader meetings, I've gotten to know a lot of the chapter leaders throughout District 75, and a lot of them do contact me to ask questions, request some support, and I'm happy to continue to provide them with that. Also, I'm a very strong supporter of Retiree Advocate and the work that they're doing to protect the healthcare of retirees. That does impact all UFT members, including those of us who are active duty. As we always say, any active duty UFT member is a future retiree. So really active duty UFT members need to take this more seriously and be more aware of what is going on. And I definitely plan to provide help with building that awareness amongst our active duty UFT members. And I also just want to take a second to applaud the work of everyone at Retiree Advocate, because they're doing the real deal union work that I feel is sometimes missing from the work that our UFT leadership is undertaking.
Thank you. And Arthur, you got a word to end us on? Let's
Thank you.
close out with a smile.
Thank you very much for joining us, guys. We really do appreciate your time and your support of UFT members.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.